All right, cool. All right, so I'm going to share this with you guys. If you don't see it, put it in the Q&A. It's coming up in a second here. All right. Okay, so we're doing the college timeline from spring of 10th grade, which is where people are, where we are right now in the April, May kind of area of the school year, through spring of 12th grade. So a little bit about me before we get started. So my name is Jeff Hirsch, and I've been working in the education field for the last 15 years or so. I was down in New York City for about 8 years. I was a counselor. I was also a teacher for a few of those years. I taught a class called College Bound, which was a class that we taught to freshmen and sophomores, which helped them with all the aspects of their college applications. It's a curriculum that I wrote myself with a coworker of mine. So I did that for 3 years, and then I moved up to my current gig, which is a high school in Westchester County. This is my 6th year there. I'm at White Plains High School in Westchester County. And in addition, on the side and in the summertime, I have a program and a college consulting firm called College Starter, which is support for all things college application and admissions. And we do a lot of flexible work, a lot of assistance with all aspects of the college application. I work with a bunch of colleagues, friends who are also in the business who do SAT prep and financial aid consultation, what else did I say? SAT prep, a few other things. And the goal here is to kind of help families and support them where they are. So I don't do a lot of kind of hit you over the head with package deals, things like that. Some families only need me for an hour. Some families need me for 2 or 3 or 5, whatever it might be. Some only would need support with the essay or the common application. Whatever it is, I support all aspects of that. And I do this on a day-to-day basis. I work with kids every single day in my high school, and it's kind of my bread and butter and my passion. So I'm really excited to kind of share some stuff with you today. So let's get into it. So before I even get into the actual timeline portion, I want to kind of get over really quickly about the factors in college admissions. So there are really 6 factors that college admissions officers are looking for when they see a college application, and they really do go in order. It's kind of like, it's not like, well, if they don't have this thing, they can do this thing. It's really pretty standard. So the first thing that admissions officers are looking for when a kid applies, the very, very first thing, the number one thing that matters the most is a kid's grades. Okay. So if a kid is looking to apply to a pretty selective school, and on the outside of their academics, they're doing all sorts of things, they're into clubs and activities, and they've got amazing recommendation letters. If their GPA is not up to the college's standards, they're not going to get in. Okay. Now there are outliers, and there are obviously, but I knew somebody and this person. Okay. By and large, almost certainly grades must be there for a college rep to turn the page and look at the other things. Okay. In addition to the GPA, the thing that colleges look for is that course rigor. So on the transcript, they're going to see the grades, and the colleges want to see good grades, really strong grades, and really strong classes. All right. So if your school offers AP and honors, they want to see you taking AP and honors if your kid or if you as a student are up to that or have the ability to do so. After that, and this kind of flip-flops here and there, but by and large, the vast majority of the schools are looking for strong SAT or ACT scores. All right. So you're going to ask me, you're asking about test optional schools, or you've heard about test optional schools. That's true. There are test optional schools. If you apply to a school that's test optional and you choose not to send your SAT or ACT score, they're going to look very, very, very closely at your GPA. Meaning, if you have a 3.5 GPA, which is a little bit below what the school is looking for, and you do not send your SAT scores, that's going to be a huge ding against you. If you're a 4.0 student and they're looking for a 3.5 GPA and you don't send your scores, then you're probably okay. But by and large, schools are still looking for really strong SAT and ACT scores. If you hit all those marks, you get all the grades, and you got the SAT scores, and you're taking really strong, rigorous courses, then they'll turn the page and they'll look at the other things. Okay, how does this round out the student's application? The college essay, super, super, super important. It's the one spot in the college application where kids can really separate themselves. It's the one spot where kids have a voice. It's not just numbers and data and other people talking about them or talking for them. It's really their one chance to get their voice out there. And that essay is a 650-word essay from the Common Application prompts. I won't get into that too much more, but There's 7 prompts. They'll choose one, and they're asking the same thing. They're saying, "Tell us about you." It's a really great chance to capture your voice in a really authentic way as a student. After that will be the extracurricular activities. So those are the things that come outside the academic school day: clubs, sports, work, internships, community service, all of those things. And then after that, or kind of like in that range, is going to be the recommendation letters. And I'll talk briefly about that in a few minutes. So these are the 6 things. These are the things that colleges are looking for, really in this order: grades, rigor, SAT or ACT, college essay, extracurriculars, and recommendation letters. I want to launch a quick poll here really quickly to see kind of what your knowledge is on this. So the poll is, you'll see it come on your screen. Do some schools require you to take both the ACT and the SAT? Yes or no? I'll give you like 10 seconds to answer this. You guys should be teaching this webinar. You pretty much know exactly the answers. All right, everyone got it right. Every single person on here. All right, no, you do not require, no college requires you to take both, none. You can take either or, they don't care. It's really like Coke versus Pepsi. It's your choice, whatever you want to do. All right, so let's get into the basic timeline. All right, so here we are, spring of sophomore year, and actually right now around this time, I'm a guidance counselor, obviously I do this every day. Right around this time, or like in the next like week or two, is really a good time for a sophomore to start to check in with their guidance counselor. We've obviously turned the page on the seniors by and large. They know where they're going to school. It's past May 1st. We've had our junior college meeting, our meetings with our juniors. We're doing our follow-ups with them as well. You know, we'll probably have 1 or 2, at least 1, usually 2 kind of meetings before the summer. But, you know, we start to kind of slow down around now. And now is a really good time for sophomores to come in and check in with their counselor to say, okay, you know, where should I be? What should I be doing for the summer? This is kind of what I'm thinking. Any thoughts? Or I don't really know what to do. I have no idea what I'm doing. And that's a good time for me to kind of check in with my kids. So it's a good time for a sophomore to check in with a guidance counselor right around now. Around this time as well, you're going to want to start to think about SAT or ACT prep. Now, this is where it gets a little bit muddy. You'll see in the timeline in a minute, most students will take the SAT or ACT in the spring of junior year. Depending on the kid, depending on the family, some are looking to take the SAT or the ACT in the fall of junior year. So if you're a sophomore who's thinking about taking it in the fall, definitely now's the time to start thinking about your SAT, ACT prep. And if you're going to go with a test prep company, which if you can swing it, if you can afford it, and I obviously recommend that. If you can't, there's resources out there that we can that can support you. And certainly you can ask me if you want me to send you anything. But I always like to say this: the worst thing you can do over the summer is nothing at all. All right, the summer is an opportunity to take advantage of the time. All right, so some examples: work, attend a summer program on a college campus. Some of them are expensive. There are others that are free, especially those of you in Westchester County. There's a bunch of ones in the city that are free. If you're looking for resources as well, email me. I can send you some opportunities. Take an internship in a field you might be interested in. Take classes at a local community college. If you go to WCC right here in Westchester County, you could probably take a class for, depending on cost for credit, maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of $900. I know it's not cheap, but you might be able to get 3 credits that could transfer to your high school, depending if it's cleared with your coordinators over there, your APs. At the very least, kind of you're doing something. You're kind of keeping yourself involved. You're keeping, so there's no kind of that summer melt, as we call it. Volunteer somewhere or work on your passion. A lot of times students are interested in things. They play guitar, they're an artist, they want to learn how to surf. These are really great opportunities to kind of work on those passions. It might turn into a really great essay. It might turn into a really great story that you can share with someone in your college application. I'm going to take a brief pause and we'll see if we have any questions. Nope. Good. Moving on. All right. So now you're going to get into the junior year. So here we are in the fall of junior year, September or so, going through November. Now is a really good time for those students to start thinking about the colleges they're interested in. Specifically, I want you to think about the matches and the fits. Those are 2 different things. This is super important. So here's a case study, right? Pretend it's me, and I'm a 2.5 GPA student, which is not terribly solid, but certainly good enough to get into tons of schools throughout the country. I'm going to be looking for target schools that are looking for 2.5, 2.7 students. One day I'm with my friend, I go down and visit NYU, and I'm blown away. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. And NYU is my dream school, okay? So that's my fit. It has everything I want. That's my dream school. That's my fit. However, my 2.5 GPA is not a match. Those things do not line up. So I have to find not only the school that I love, the school that has all the same qualities that NYU has, but also a school that kind of is within my my transcript and within my application, right? So if I'm a 2.5, I'm looking for schools that are kind of in that target range. NYU is my favorite school, but it's not a fit. It's not a match based upon my fit. All right, so in that time frame, in the junior year, in the December to March time. So again, if you're a student who's going on the traditional kind of pathway, which is taking the SATs in the spring of junior year, this is where you are. At this point in the December through March time, you're starting to prep for that SAT, ACT. You need to be prepared to take 2 of those, one of them, choose one, 2 of those before the summer. Some will take 1, some will take 2, some will take 1 in the spring, some will take 1 in the fall of senior year. We could talk about that in a minute. But you should be prepared to take 2 before the summer. So around this time, you should be signing up for your SAT prep course. Hopefully in sophomore year, you kind of looked into some things. Maybe you're doing a test prep company. Maybe you have a private tutor. Maybe you're using only Khan Academy. If you don't know what that is, send me an email. I'll show it to you. Maybe you're using just resources, whatever it might be. Now's the time to start really, really begin to prep. I see a question in the queue. I'll take it in a few minutes. So now we're going towards the spring of junior year. So at this point, February through May, now is the time you're really starting to kind of hammer into your list, right? You have schools, you kind of have an idea of what you want. You kind of have an idea maybe what you want to major in. You might not have any clue about your major. That's totally fine. You might have a better idea of I want an urban school, or I want a school in the suburbs, or I want a large university or a smaller school. At this point, you got to start honing in a little bit. Maybe you visited a few schools by now, but now's the time to start to kind of like whittling that list down a little bit, right? So if you have 20, 25 schools that are kind of on your broad list, now it's time to start chopping down to that 12 to 15 range. Start lopping schools off. All right, like I said, February through June is you're going to take the SAT up to 2 times. Now, most kids who fall in this category, they take the SAT generally for the first time, in either March or April. Then they generally take it again in June. Most students, depending on how rigorous a schedule they have, will avoid the May. And the reason they avoid May is because the AP exams. So usually a kid will take it in March or April and a second time in June. Hopefully at that point they've knocked out a really strong score and then they can just wash their hands of it. They don't have to worry about it again. All right, I see a question here. I'm going to grab it real fast. Yes, there are websites. So the question is, are there websites or resources to research which schools match? Yes, but the thing is, a match is different for every kid, right? So a match for me, right, who's a 2.5 student, is going to be very different than a student who's a 4.0 student. So my huge reach schools might be totally safe schools for that 4.0 student. So it all depends on the kid. You know, for me as a school counselor or a college counselor, I need to look at the transcript, look at the SAT scores, and then I can determine what will be the matches. And I can send you websites, I can send you things like that and say, okay, here are, you know, these are target schools for you, these are match schools for you, these are reach schools for you. But it all depends on the student. So I see another question. I'm going to let that be for a minute. We'll come back to that. All right. So now, fast forward, we're still in the spring of junior year. At this point, this is when you're going to have your first official college meeting with your counselor. All right. Before you walk in the door of your counsel's office, hopefully you're going to get a pretty good idea of what your college list looks like. You know, you shouldn't be going in there blind. Ideally, you should have a pretty good idea in that like 12 to 15 range. And the counselor then will start to kind of help you kind of curate that list. And that list is going to be balanced. We're going to have usually around, 2 reach schools, 4 to 5 target schools, and then 2 or so safer schools. And then at the end of the day, when all things are said and done, out of those 8 to 10 schools, the kid will get into like 4 or 5 or 6, and then you make your choices from there. All right, so June through August, this is when the rubber meets the road, so to speak, okay? Now is the time, absolutely 100%, for the students to be working on their college essays, okay? So the Common Application, which I'm not going to get into tonight, but the Common Application is available for students to look at, especially from junior year. The Common Application essay prompts are there and ready to go. The students should be working on their essay over the summer, absolutely 100%. They should walk in the door September 1st, all right, as a senior, with a really, 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 really strong, nearly complete working draft, meaning the only thing they're working on when they come back in September are the mechanics and the structure and the grammar. They are not scratching the essay. They feel really good, confident, really, happy with where it is, but there's some cleanup, some editing and revisions. But by and large, the essay is like 85% of there. Certainly for students who are applying to more selective schools, over the summertime, they absolutely must work on their supplemental essays, right? All of that work is like the most heavy lifting of this whole process. Those supplemental essays, they're kind of short usually. They're usually asking the same thing. So if I'm applying to NYU, they're going to say, there's a big question, but it's really why NYU? Why are you choosing us? And you've got to really nail that, right? And it's usually like 250 words or 400 words, not long, but it's super important. They want to know you really have done your research. And now is the time to do it outside of your other academic obligations. You've got 10 weeks in the summertime to do it. You have camp, you've got work, you're going on vacation, whatever it is, right? I'm going to be kind of harsh here. It doesn't matter. Now is the time to carve out enough time to work on those college essays. Really quick, there is one resource here I love to use. So obviously, visit colleges as much as you can. Some folks can do that easier than others. If you can't, or if it's too far away, you're not going to just pop out the University of Michigan, one day and go see it. I love this website, uvisit.com. If I had the time today, I would put you on there and show it. But it's a virtual reality website, super, super interactive. I love it. It's amazing. Most schools that our kids apply to, especially in the Westchester area, are on there. Definitely take a look at it. You can do really great virtual tours there. So same thing. Junior year, summer year, as a rising senior, have a productive summer. The worst thing you do is nothing at all. Definitely work on those college those essays. All right. I'll take a brief pause before I go into senior year here. I'll grab some questions. So one question is, how many colleges do you recommend visiting before applying? That's all up to the student and the parent, right? So, as many as you can really muster without it becoming like overwhelming. Certainly I like kids to see a variety of schools, some smaller private liberal arts schools, obviously the public schools here in New York, they're the SUNY schools. Bigger universities, urban, schools in an urban environment like Boston University or Northeastern or Temple, which is in Philadelphia. So get a variety of schools to look at. One really good thing I've always done is with my family and I are going on vacation. If I'm driving up to, one year we drove up to Saratoga. On the way up, I stopped off at Schenectady and saw Union College. It wasn't a school that was on my radar as a counselor at the time. It certainly is now. But if you're on a trip, stop in. Take a tour. If they don't have any admissions people available to tour you, take a self-guided tour. Even if it's not a school you're super, it's on your radar, take a look, because Union is a good example of a really great, small, private liberal arts school. So if you see Union, then Haverford is kind of similar, right? If you've seen Haverford, Colby is kind of similar, right? So they're really good things to kind of just check out schools in general. How important are AP scores in the transcript? AP scores do not go in the transcript generally. You self-report them on the Common Application, and I would say they're not important at all. Really, AP scores, you might get a different answer from another counselor, but for me, I've never had it be an issue, whether they're good or bad. I've never had an admissions rep ask me about it, and you really only are sending your AP scores when you're trying to get college credit. So if you got a 4 on your AP US History exam, and then you end up going to Lehigh, you're going to try to turn those into credits, and you'll request a transcript from the College Board, or the scores from the College Board. You'll have it sent to Lehigh, and Lehigh will determine whether or not they will award you the credit. Do you recommend visiting colleges? Last question, I'm going to move on. Do you recommend visiting colleges the summer before junior year? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can visit colleges, as freshmen. Absolutely. I mean, I don't think that, there's no harm in going to see schools to get a better idea of what's out there. I mean, it's all depends on you and your family and the student. It's not about pressure. If you guys are reading any of my blog posts, I'm not a pressure counselor. I really, this whole process, I'm trying to kind of ease the anxiety and the mania and the hysteria. There are so many amazing colleges out there, and, it should be a fun thing. So going to visit schools as a sophomore, knowing that in 2 years, you're going to be going to college for 3 years, it's really exciting. That's really what it should be. So it's like, hey, let's check out a couple of schools this summer. We're going on vacation. Let's do it. Not as if like we need to see schools. We have to see schools now. It's kind of like just the mindset and the mentality. So absolutely go see schools. It's kind of a fun thing. I love going to college campuses, and that's just me, but absolutely you can do that. All right, so moving on. So here we are, senior year. So this is it, right? Kids come back in the door September, and September moves really fast. So if you work in a high school, if anybody on the line here works in a school, it's like being shot out of a cannon, right? So like Labor Day comes, and here we are, we're back in the building. And in my high school, which is 2,000 kids and all the staff, there was 2,200 people in the building, and everyone's just like, okay, here we go. So your classes start back up. Your sports have been started since August. You're seeing your friends. You're a senior. You're all excited. Things go fast. Before you realize it's already October 1st, and then it's Columbus Day weekend. And then before you know it, those early deadlines, November 1st, are here. So you have a really short window between September and November 1 for those early deadlines to get your applications ready to go, which is why the summer cannot be wasted. So students who are applying early action or early decision, which is the binding agreement, they are going to be applying by November 1st. Some of the deadlines are then, some are the 15th of November, but the early ones are by November. And I absolutely 100% without question urge you to apply early. And the reason for that is not to add pressure, but to remove it, right? Applying early, besides getting a little bit of bump in selectivity rate, applying early allows the student to get responses back earlier so they can kind of just breathe after Christmas break, okay? So if I apply to 6 schools by November 1st, early action, odds are I'm going to get my responses for a majority, if not all those schools, by December 15th. All right, some schools might wait to render decisions based upon your mid-year scores. Some schools might defer to you and put you back in the pool. But by and large, I should have a pretty good, I'm going to go home on Christmas break if I apply to 8 schools, with 4 schools in my pocket already. And I'm going to be I'm going to be able to breathe. And it's going to be really okay, now I just kind of wait for my other schools and, I can decide by February, whatever it might be, where I'm going to go. And it just really eases the process. The students who wait until, after Thanksgiving break into Christmas time or somewhere around then those kids are not getting decisions back until March, maybe April. They're not making their decisions until right up against the May 1st deadline. At that point, senior year is pretty much over, and you've kind of had a really stressful kind of 8 to 10 months. Students who apply, even if you apply early, if you want to take that second ACT or SAT, you can do that. The SAT is in October. The ACT, I think, is in September. You can do that in the early fall, even if you apply early. You do not have to wait to apply early. Hang on, let me back up. You can still apply early action, right, or even early decision if you take the early October or late September SAT, ACT. That's totally fine. The scores will be rendered within 2 weeks. You can totally send them off. But if you're trying to take one in November, then at that point, obviously, you can't apply early action anywhere. Okay. I do not recommend students take the SAT or ACT more than twice. That's just my opinion. I've talked to plenty of people at the College Board. Even their data indicates that you do not move the needle terribly much from the second to the third time. Certainly from the first to the second, they do. From the second to the third, generally not as much. And at what cost? That's always my question, right? In order for you to move the needle from 2 to 3, you really have to, prep. And to gain 40 points maybe? So my advice is always, depending on the scores, spend your energy cleaning up that application, essays, supplemental essays, making sure everything is perfect so that your package is ready to go. So you've applied, senior year comes, so December to May is when your decisions are going to come in. So everyone, the National Decision Day is May 1st. Ideally, you have 5-6 schools in your pocket by February, and you're just waiting to kind of weigh your options. Maybe you want to visit the school again. Maybe you need to visit a school for the first time. Maybe one of the schools you applied to is University of Indiana, and you've seen the U-Visit virtual tour. You've got a friend who goes there, but you've never actually been on campus. So, it's one of your top choices. You're not totally sure, but you need to go out and visit it. So now's when you kind of spend that time. Certainly, applying early, it kind of allows you to kind of gives you some runway to kind of work with in that time frame. All right, so let me answer. I got a couple of questions on the deck here. How important, okay, can you explain the difference between early action and early decision? So early action, so there are a bunch of application plans. There's regular decision, there's rolling admissions, there's early action, and there's early decision. There's other ones too, but I won't get into those. Early action, all that means is you apply early, you're gonna hear it earlier. So it's not binding. You can apply to as many schools as you want, early action. Early decision is a binding agreement. So if I apply to NYU, early decision, and I get in, I have to go, okay? It's not like you don't break the law per se, but it's an ethical dilemma, right? You cannot pull out unless there are really certain circumstances, which I can talk to you guys. If you have a question, just shoot me an email. But early decision is a binding agreement. You can only apply to one school, early decision, obviously, since you can only go to one school. On my caseload of seniors, I have 50 seniors this year. every year, on average, I get about 2 who apply early decision. So it's pretty rare. We are definitely seeing it more. And the reason we're seeing it more is because the selectivity rates are much better if you apply early decision. But there's a couple of downsides to it. Certainly willing to talk to you about it. If you have any questions, you can just shoot me an email. How important are SAT 2s? SAT 2s are only important to schools who recommend or require it. The only schools who usually recommend or require it are pretty selective schools. So if you're applying to like Pace or Westchester or Iona or any number of schools around here that are not like the most selective, they're not going to care. They don't need them. But if you're a student right now who's a 10th grader or an 11th grader who's thinking about applying to a top 50, top 75 school, then yeah, you need to take the SAT 2s. And that can generally be in any subject at all, right? There's 20 subjects, I believe. There's Hebrew, there's world history, there's math 1, there's math 2, there's biology. So take the one, what I suggest is take the one or the 2 that you feel most comfortable in, that you feel most confident you do really well in, and take it directly after that class is over. So if you're a sophomore and you're doing really, really good in AP world history, take your subject test at the end of sophomore year. Don't try and take it junior year because you're a year and change removed from the material. Applying to colleges out of the country, I talked to you about, that's a totally different ball game. I'm certainly happy to kind of explore that, but I can't answer that right now. All right, so I'm going to move on to a different share really fast. Okay, give me 1 minute. Oops, daisy, share screen. It's 8:30, so I got about 5 minutes here, and we'll go to questions fully. Oops, sorry. Oh, yeah. Sorry, guys. 1 second. All right, so here's I'm not going to go over this like with a fine-tooth comb because I don't want to waste your time. I kind of went over the basics of it. This is a more finite look at the timeline. I'm going to email everybody this in the next few days once I kind of send everybody this presentation. There are things on here. So this it's very again, it's much more targeted. So sophomore year, April and May, complete your program planning with your counselor, which is something that you've already done every year. Obviously, you guys meet with your students meet with their counselor to do program planning. That's super important so that you can, if you're a strong student, you got to make sure that rigor is really up as strong as it can possibly be moving forward. There's the same things I said about the sophomore year. I'm just going to explain this to you. I'm not going to go through it one by one. You'll see here there's documents to use in the bottom. I have all of these resources. I'm not going to send them with the email I send you, but if you want them, I will send them to you, right? So there's something called for example, there's a 2-page profile. That profile will allow students to start doing really targeted search. It's kind of almost like a graphic organizer that helps students. It's kind of designed to kind of help students one by one and looking for questions and responses and to kind of get their, kind of get them in a way to target researching as opposed to kind of perusing on a website saying, oh, those pictures are nice, or oh, this seems interesting. It's really much more targeted. So going over here, I have the common application over here for junior year. So for instance, it says March or June of junior year to open the common application and familiarize yourself with the common app and start filling out some of the tabs. The website is right here. I have something called self-reflection forms here. So I'll talk about this really briefly. So junior year, around springtime, after I meet with my kids for their college meetings, I'll say, okay, you need to ask 2 teachers to write recommendation letters. So I'm going to put a poll up here really fast, okay? Here's my poll. All right. Who should you absolutely get a recommendation letter from? Any teacher, core teacher from 11th grade, employer, coach. Who should you absolutely get it from? Another 10 seconds here. I got almost all the votes in. Keep going, keep going, keep going. 3, 2, and 1. All right. The vast majority of you got it right. That's not right. Sorry. The other ones are not wrong. But the vast majority of you are, in terms of the rule of thumb, the best rule of thumb is a core teacher from junior year. Certainly, at the very least, you've got to get a teacher at the very least. But you really, 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 especially when you're going to apply to pretty strong schools, you're really looking for at least one from your junior year, preferably both of them from junior year. And the reason for that is that A, most importantly, they're the teacher that's had you most recently, right? So they're not far removed from knowing the student. B, the kid's really kind of at their apex of maturity, right? At that point, they're not, juniors are kind of like, at this point, they're starting to kind of grow up into their own. They're more cognitively developed and all that. And 3, usually the classes are obviously the most challenging, right? So they're in those kind of more rigorous, the rigor has kind of gone up quite a bit from freshman to sophomore year. So if you're looking for self-reflection forms, you're going to say, what is that? Email me. I will send you the forms. Really, this is a way for the students to really, really almost write the recommendation letters themselves and give to those teachers so those teachers can write the best possible recommendation letter for them. So timeline stretches out through junior year into senior year, where the kids start really filling out their common application in the summertime, continuing their research at schools. July, first draft of essay, second draft of essay, supplemental essays, getting into August where you're really starting to kind of like curate that list and cull it down, get down to 8 to 10 schools, start to add the schools to your common application. I do a whole workshop on the common application, so that's something totally different. I can walk you through that during the next workshop that I'll do. I do one on the activities profile as well. Complete your final draft, your essays, and then when you get into senior year, it's really like checking in with the teachers to make sure they're still writing the recommendations so they know what they're doing. Finalize 100%, certainly in September, that essay, complete those supplemental essays, complete that common application, final review, your parent, your counselor, whoever that may be, and get ready to submit. The end goal really is October 20th. That gives you a little bit of cushion before the early deadlines. If you're applying to 10 schools, maybe 2 of them you're just like, I just can't finish them, I need more time. But hopefully you can apply to 8 early, and the other 2 you can kind of like do in the next few weeks, get them off after the early deadlines. But ideally, you send all your schools prior to the early deadlines, ideally. All right, I'm going to stop this share. I'm going to go to Q&A. Am I stopping the share? Yes. And that was about 35 minutes. I said it would be about a half hour. I'm going to hang tight for 5-10 minutes or more, depending. If your questions, if you don't want to ask it here, you got to leave and you want to ask me, shoot me an email. I'll certainly help you. I'll answer it there. But I'll hang tight for a few minutes here. You're welcome, Matthew. Someone wrote here way back, sorry, I'm going to answer this real quick. What happens if you don't get a really high SAT, ACT score? So it's all relative, right? So again, if I'm a 2.5 student and I get a 1,000 on my SAT and I want to go to, a less selective school, a school that accepts 75% or more, then it's not a huge deal. I'm pretty much in the ballpark. All those other things kind of add up, and hopefully that's going to get me in. If I want to go to NYU, and I'm a 4.0 student, which I'm a really strong student, but I have 1,000, I'm in big trouble. I'm in big trouble. That's all there is to it, right? I'm almost certainly not going to get into NYU with 1,000, which is essentially like an average score on my SAT. 1,000 will get me into tons of colleges, but depending on how selective the school is, those SAT or ACT are super, super important. And I try to be cognizant that I don't want to put a lot of pressure on the kids. But if those kids are looking at really specific schools, I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to say, oh, you're good with 1,000. No, you're not. You're not going to get into NYU with 1,000. All right. So it's all relative depending on the school and how important those scores are going to be. All right. I'm just kind of going through here. I see a bunch of questions. I answered that. I answered that. I did that. I did that. I did that. So I offer a bunch of other webinars. You'll be in my mailing list now, which you may or may not like. If you don't want to be, the first email you get from me on the bottom, just press unsubscribe. I will not take it personally, but you will get my information, all the webinars I do as they kind of come up. You'll be on my mailing list, and you'll see. If you want to shoot me an email later on, I can give you a more specific answer right now. So one question is, the jobs available to current 10th graders are very simple, cashier, etc. Are they beneficial or better to go to CC for the summer, community college? I would say working is super important. Obviously, colleges and, know that what's available to kids, right? A kid who's a sophomore is not going to be, working as a bartender, right? Or it's a bad example, but they're not going to be working a job that they cannot, do based upon their age. I think any kind of job is great. I have kids who spend time in the winter time during the breaks, like shoveling snow and making extra cash. Like, that's a really cool story. That's a really cool thing they're doing, right? Whatever kids are doing, again, the worst thing you can do is nothing. So I think having a job is totally, absolutely, whatever it is, totally appropriate. If they want to take a class instead, also fine. But I think having any job is totally cool. Do I consider Naviance a good tool for comparing information about different schools? So Naviance is an excellent tool if your school uses it, depending on how much data they have. So I don't know about, I don't necessarily use them to compare schools, but the best thing about Naviance is you can see how your peers in your school are doing. So at my school, we've had Naviance for 15 years. So we have a lot of data. So if I have a kid sitting next to me who wants to apply to NYU again, right? We've probably had in the past 15 years, 100 kids apply to NYU. So I can look at the scatter plot and I can see, okay, my kid's a 4.0 with a 1300 SAT score. And I can see how many kids in that range, in that exact same range, have gotten in or have gotten denied over the past 15 years. And the kid can see it. So it's a really great tool for them to kind of see, okay, these are my peers in the same school that go here. And these are the ones who are kind of getting in. These are not by name, but these are the kids who are getting in. These are the ones who are not. And that would be a reach for me. I thought I would get in no problem, but kids in my school are not getting in that, at a clip that I thought they would be. So I think it's a really, really great tool to use, specifically for how your peers in your building are doing when they apply to those schools. How do you determine which test is better for you, SAT or ACT? Do you take both? So here's where I tell you that I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in the SAT, ACT. I work with a colleague on, my consulting firm who is my SAT, ACT person. I can give you her information. She will do a baseline for you, and which will help determine which one might be the best fit for you. For school, for people who are not necessarily using prep companies or people in general, I think the best way to do it is to take both, right? Not live, but for practice. So all the prep companies, all those outfits offer free ones on the weekends because they want to try to get your business. But really, you can just go there and do it for free. They'll administer it in like the same setting you would do it as a live one. They'll score it. They'll send you the score report and everything. I suggest kids do that. Take the practice ones for both ACT and SAT. Then they'll know exactly which one they'll feel more comfortable with. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh, the SAT has this breakdown and it's better for kids with science. I don't know, right? It's not my area of expertise. I have a basic understanding of it. I know it from the college admission perspective. I'm not an SAT, ACT expert, so I'm not going to pretend to know. But I would say take them both for practice and then go for that one. Okay. Hi, Gemma. Do some programs like engineering require SAT subject tests even if the school itself doesn't? That's a good question. It's possible. It's possible. I'm going to hold that question right now, and I'm going to find out for you, and I'm going to email you. I don't want to make it up on the spot. It's certainly possible. Nothing jumps off the top of my head, but it's certainly possible that some specific programs within the school will require something. Most likely, but I don't want to be sure. I got to look into it. My school has teachers write informal recommendations for juniors. Is this different from recommendations that we saw on the timeline? I don't know what you mean by informal. So it's maybe, but I don't know what you mean by informal, because recommendation letters by their virtue are formal, right? Like, you don't see them. They get sent directly to the schools. They don't, like, a teacher's not going to hand it to you for you to like then send along. You don't see them, right? That you ask, Mr. Davis for a recommendation letter. Mr. Davis says yes. You give him all like the tools to write a great one. Mr. Davis writes it, and he gets it off to the guidance counselor, who then gets it off to the colleges. You're out of it. Once you ask him and give him what he needs, you're out of it. So I don't know what an informal one is. Certainly you can ask me a follow-up question through email. You talked about the importance of course rigor. Is there an ideal number of AP courses a student should take before senior year? So that all goes back to the student. If I'm a really, really strong student, if I'm a 4.0 student, right? If I'm a high A, low A, high B across the board, and my school offers a multitude of AP courses, and I'm not taking them, that's a huge problem. unless you're going to go to a not terribly selective school. But if I want to go to a really selective school and I'm not taking them, then you're in big trouble. For the more selective schools, if the high school offers rigorous courses, they should be taking them. There's no specific number. What I will say is the number is what that student can reasonably handle without like totally falling apart, right? Or not totally falling apart, without falling apart at all, right? The most important thing for those kids is their health, their happiness, and their safety, all right? So is they can muster doing 4 APs or 5 APs, which some kids do, that's a lot, but if they can, and they're like still like chugging along and they have a healthy balance in their life, yes, for sure. If they say to themselves, I can do 3, but I know AP Psych is going to completely crush me, I just can't do it, then they shouldn't do it. All right. It's up to the kid in conversation with their parent, with the guidance counselor. But if the school offers APs and they have the ability to take them, they should be taking them across the board where they can manage, but certainly in spots where they feel most comfortable. Okay. What are your views on the College Board's adversity score? Totally new email, totally new, news item. I haven't dug into it yet. I know I've read the articles. I read the New York Times article. I read the article on higher ed. I don't know enough about it yet to answer it intelligently. Certainly on paper, it seems like, okay, great, but I don't know what the metrics are that go into that. I do not know if it's just like brand marketing. I don't know the colleges that were the pilot programs for it. There were 50 schools. They did not mention who they were. At least I didn't see in my reading. So I don't have a good answer for that. And I don't know how it's going to play out over the course of the next, 2 to 5 years. But I'm certainly kind of interested in learning more, especially since I'm at a high school where we have a lot of students who kind of fall in that category. Awesome. You're welcome, Dara. How many recommendation letters are colleges looking for? Colleges are looking for at least 1 recommendation from a teacher, generally 2 recommendations from a teacher. At my school and most people's schools, we have the kids ask for 2 recommendation letters from teachers. And then if you want to do additional ones, you can. So the rule of thumb is 2 from a teacher from core classes, generally from junior year. The guidance counselor will automatically write 1. And then if you want from an employer or from a coach or whatever else, you can do that. The coach, the employer, the pastor, the rabbi, that will never substitute for a teacher recommendation letter. Colleges are academic institutions. What they want to know is they want to know about the student as an academic learner, right? So an employer is good. That's great. But does not substitute for the teacher. We need to hear from the teacher about how that student is in their classroom. So I would say definitely 1, probably 2. Is it better to take a less rigorous course and have a great deal of success, or an AP with minimal success? Definitely the former, okay? A student should be getting at least a B in that AP or honors course to really be staying in there, right? If you're a student who's just squeaking by an AP US with a 73, you shouldn't be in there, right? They should drop down. Again, this is a conversation with the counselors. I'm just saying, on paper, they should not be in that class. More than likely, they should drop down to the Regents level. There is this misconception, this myth that, well, just taking AP is enough. They look at it. No, they don't, right? If you're not pulling your weight in the AP class, you shouldn't be in there. So you should be, if you can pull a high B in US History Regents, that's what you should be taking. If you're going to get a 74 in AP US, don't take it. All right. In fact, in most schools, if you drop below a certain level, then you're going to get bumped out of there for the following year. So like, for instance, if you took AP World History as a sophomore, ended up with a 74, you can't then take AP US History as a junior. You got to go down to Regents level. Usually that's the case for most schools. From a college admissions office, is it better to get a B or, same thing. Same question. All right, I just answer it. No, yes, it's better to get an A in a non-AP course than it is to get a B in an AP course. And there's some kind of like wiggle room there because you're talking about A's and B's. But if it's B's and C's, definitely don't be in the AP class. If it's B's and A's, you can make an argument maybe to some degree for a class or 2 if you're kind of fighting through a class. Like, I have kids all the time who are getting, who have or they're an AP, let's try something different. They're like in what's a good one? Okay, AP language and composition, right? So they're English class. And they're just really like, they're fighting through it. They're at like an 81, 82, 83. They're kind of just like, they're getting through it. To drop them down, I wouldn't do that. I let them fight through it because, an 83 in AP language and composition is strong as opposed to 89 or 91 in the Regents level. And also I can beat the horn on it as a counselor and be like, okay, Diana, she struggled with AP language and comp. Like it was an outlier in her transcript. you know, usually she's an A student, but barely got a B in this one, but she fought through it. She was going for extra help. She kind of like, you know, she came in, she talked to me about it. We dissected it. We said, all right, you know, I'm just going to power through, and she got it done. And it kind of like showcases some kind of grit there also. So I would say that, you know, there is some wiggle room with kind of how you look at those things. I'll take one or two more. We're at 8:50 right now. Going once. Certainly, if you don't want to ask the question here, you're welcome. Thank you for being here. You can certainly shoot me an email. You will be hearing from me to some degree. You know, I do send out blog posts every like month and a half or so. There are more webinars to come. If you're not interested in getting my mailings, certainly unsubscribe. Totally cool. No worries. You're welcome. You're welcome. And I got one last question, which I will answer. The question is honors classes versus AP classes. AP classes are almost certainly going to be more rigorous. The AP classes are following a national curriculum. Colleges understand what those are. They know, okay, the AP curriculum is written by the College Board. It's universal across the board. The honors courses generally are written by the teachers in the building, so they're a little more like, kind of like, you know, unclear, you know, for colleges. They don't know exactly what the rigor is. The AP courses are going to be almost certainly more rigorous. So if you're, for instance, my school, we offer English honors, and we also offer AP language and composition for a student who's strong, but maybe not, they don't feel like they're going to be able to do really well in AP language and comp. They'll go to English 3 honors, and that's probably a better fit for them. So yeah, AP courses are going to generally be more rigorous. All right, I'm going to end here. You're welcome you're welcome, Tracy. You're welcome, Noreen. You're welcome, Julie. And all of you who didn't say thank you, you're also welcome. I know you're thinking it. And thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I know it's like kind of like, you know, in the middle of the week, and it's like, you know, we're all doing things, but I hope you got a lot out of this, or at least something, take away one or two things. I'll shoot you an email in the coming days with the timeline and with the actual video of this webinar. Any questions, any support you might need, shoot me an email, and I'm happy to kind of to work with you or answer your questions. All right. So thank you so much, and take care. Good luck.